Guys, today we are diving into a conversation that has sparked a firestorm across social media. An interview featuring Errol Musk, father of Elon Musk, where he makes some extremely controversial claims about apartheid, about Black South Africans, about the United States becoming a minority white country. His words have been called out, outdated, deeply offensive, and historically inaccurate, and rooted in ideas many people hoped we had left in the past. And yet, here they are, resurfacing in 2025 with millions of views. So today, we are not just reacting, we are unpacking. We are going to look at what he said, why people are outraged, and most importantly, what the actual story shows. Because when someone denies apartheid oppression, claims Black South Africans were simply fed, and suggests that America will go back to the jungle if white people become a minority.
Errol Musk, Elon Musk's dad. I got to give it to this guy. He doesn't pull any punches. His racism is right in your face. I love that ignorant shit. I mean, he serves it on a hot plate. His racism is like, whoo, steaming racism right there. He don't hide it. He doesn't do that passive aggressive shit that people do. You know, he gives it to you right in your face. And that's why I respect his ass, because we know where we stand with this crazy mother who got his stepdaughter pregnant.
So Errol Musk got on CNN and said, if white people become minority, America's basically headed back to the jungle. Sir, you're from South Africa. The audacity is on autopilot, y'all. Then he said there was no oppression in South Africa. Donnie told him that's because you're white. Errol blinked like he got hit with a software update he didn't ask for. And now Trump's yelling white genocide again while South Africa's like, please stop embarrassing us. These men rewrite history like they're editing a tweet. Newsflash, diversity isn't the end of the world. It's just the end of y'all being unchecked. Moral of the story, the only jungle here is the mindset. And some people refuse to evolve, y'all. Crazy.
The big concern at the moment, and why I think South Africa is a big talking point in the US right now, is America in the next 20 years will become, for the first time in its history, a minority white country.
Well, that will be a very, very bad thing to happen. You want to see the US go down? Why? Oh, you don't like cars and electric cars, and you don't like technology, or what is it? You want to go back to the jungle, or?
If the US becomes a minority white country.
Yes.
So there's Latinas, there's blacks, there's people from all different races make up the majority, and then, it could be 48% white people. Do you really think the US is doomed if it goes under?
Yes, it goes under there.
Seriously?
Yes, of course. You see, if you take South Africa, we have a small white population that projects European culture, or what we learned from Europe.
And oppressed millions of black people.
No.
For decades.
How do you oppress? We gave them work, we fed them. They grew from a tiny little group into a massive group. That's not oppression, that's feeding them. Do you understand? You only grow big if you get fed. You only start at 800 and become 50 million if you get fed. We fed them, for crying out loud. Enough with this nonsense.
But so you understand, because the black population was so oppressed under apartheid.
Well, we never saw this oppression you're talking about.
You never saw it.
No, I never saw it.
Yeah, because you're white.
So according to him, if you force a group into poverty, control where they live and what jobs they have access to, but you don't let them starve, then that magically cancels out oppression. So that's like a slave master saying, but they're not oppressed, I feed them. I gave them food. I'm not oppressing them. Yeah, they're not oppressed, I give them food. But what do I expect, really, from a family that benefited from apartheid? You call that feeding us, forcing black men to go and work in mines under dangerous working conditions. You call that feeding us. A passbook system, you call that feeding us. My grandparents carrying dome passes, that's you feeding them. Forcing us to live in reserves, to live in fucking homelands, Bantustans, you call that feeding us. Land dispossessions, land theft, you call that feeding us. Torturing us, tormenting us, right? Killing our brothers and sisters, you call that feeding us. It's really interesting to hear these people deny what they've done in the past, you know what I mean? And we can never truly move past it unless we acknowledge.
Okay, and then I was like, what are you actually insinuating? You don't like technology, you don't like... So what you're trying to say is that if there's less white people, there won't be any technology. There won't be cars. Okay.
You want to go back to the jungle or?
Okay.
At a CNN interview, Elon Musk's dad, Errol Musk, was asked for his thoughts about the possibility that the US will become a white minority country in the next 20 years. To which Errol Musk said, that is very, very bad. Why do you want to see the US go down? You don't like electric cars? You don't like technology? What, you want to go back to the jungle? Wow. You know what I want? I want him to go and ask his kids those questions. That's very rich coming from a man that was tickling his own children. In fact, since we're asking questions, go and ask your stepdaughter Jana how it felt for you to make her your baby mama to 2 children. Wow. He also went on to say in South Africa, there's a small white population that is projecting the European culture. But then the interviewer interjected saying that, yeah, but they oppressed millions of black people. To which Errol Musk denied that, saying he knew nothing about oppression in apartheid. He said there was no oppression because they fed the people, they gave them jobs, and that's how you grow a population, by feeding the people. This is wild. It's like when a bunch of people break into your store and they steal everything, right? But they come back every single day to donate 1 rand. And then they'll be like, yeah, but we supported you, Mus. This is why you're successful today. We supported you. It's not like we did anything wrong. We did you a favor, which is totally false. There's no accountability whatsoever. The land and the resources and everything else already belongs to the Africans. So what is he on about? Also, how convenient is it for you to deny the oppression when you are catching out on all the benefits of it? Like, don't gaslight us, please. Tano Daddy, mommy is so serious. Also, CNN, why would you give this man a platform like that? Like, who wants to listen to that?
This is some literally crazy stuff I just heard from Elon Musk's dad. I'm like, why is he able to talk? I'm sitting here listening to all the stuff he said, and I'm like, is he for real? I'm used to people being this way because I have lived in America for a very long time. So you're always going to hear people saying stuff like this, but it's just like, it's outrageous. It is outrageous. I was just like, let me get my thoughts together. I don't even think I have any more words, but he said, do you want to see the world go down? We fed them, made them strong, and made them who they are. Today is Saturday. I don't think I'm going to let myself get that upset. There's already enough stuff going on. It's raining. I'm trying to get to the store, get some things. So I'm just like, but I saw that and I was just like, I felt myself boiling up because I was just like, this really needs to stop.
Now, let's start by examining the core message in Errol Musk's statements, because the framing here matters. He presents South Africa under apartheid as a society supposedly sustained by a small white population, projecting European culture. And from that premises, he jumps straight into demographic fears about America, arguing that if white people became a minority, the country will somehow decline or go under. But the most shocking part is the denial of oppression. According to him, white South Africans fed black South Africans, gave them work, and therefore could not have oppressed them. He used population growth as his proof. If the majority expanded in number, then how could they have been suffering? The logic has, understandably been met with disbelief and anger. Commentators compared it to a plantation owner insisting enslaved people weren't oppressed because they were fed. Others pointed out that black South Africans weren't passive recipients of food. They were the majority of the labor force producing it. And that right there is the crumbling point of his entire argument. Now, let's slow this down, because the deeper we go, the clearer it becomes just how disconnected these claims are from historical reality. Under apartheid, Black South Africans were not simply given work. They were systemically forced into labor by laws designed specifically to control their movement, restrict their opportunities, and suppress their freedom. The passbook system, dumpers, was an instrument of surveillance and humiliation, requiring Black individuals to carry documents at all times, with the threat of arrest hanging over, every interaction. This wasn't employment. It was coerced labor under the constant threat of violence. And when Errol Musk says he never saw oppression, critics answered the obvious truth. Of course, he didn't. He benefited from the system. Privilege shields people from the brutality happening right in front of them. Just as someone living on a plantation might not have, seen oppression because the entire world was structured to hide it from them. Now, let's talk about the claim that white South African fed the Black population. Commentators quickly pointed out the absurdity of that statement. Black South Africans were the majority of agricultural laborers. They planted the crops, they harvested the food, they worked the mines under lethal conditions. They built infrastructures. They literally produced the resources white South Africans were taking credit for. The idea that they were fed by their oppressors is not only historically incorrect, it flips the truth on its head. They fed the nation, not the other way around. And this brings us to the demographic comparison to the United States. Errol Musk is clearly projecting his nostalgia for apartheid era racial hierarchy into American society. He interprets diversity as instability, minority status as danger, and demographic change as collapse. But those fears say more about the insecurities of the person expressing them than about the reality of the countries, being discussed. One commentator in the sources flipped Musk's argument back at him. If being a minority supposedly isn't oppression, since South Africa's white minority supposedly thrived, then why is he so afraid of white Americans becoming a minority? You can't have it both ways. Either being a minority is fine, or you admit that you fear losing power. And it becomes even more clearer when he uses the phrase going back to the jungle, a racist trope used for a country to argue that non-white societies are inherently uncivilized. These ideas aren't new. They are recycled colonial taking points dressed up as demographic concern. Let's also address the misconception about population growth. People grow in number, not because they are fed by their rulers, but because communities, even in conditions of exploitation, create life, create resilience, and push forward despite the systems designed to suppress them. Population growth is not proof of kindness from oppressors. It's proof of the human will to survive. Now, why does all this matter today? Because these narratives don't just distort history. They are used to justify fear, division, and policy decisions in the present. When someone with a platform denies historical oppression, it encourages others to rewrite history, erase suffering, and pretend deeply destructive systems were benevolent. But the commentators in the sources push back by saying they make it clear that acknowledging the past is not about assigning modern blame. It's about recognizing systemic harm and refusing to let anyone sanitize it. One speaker said, "Acknowledge that it was your ancestors." Acknowledge it and stop rewriting history. That is not hostility, that is accountability. And finally, the fear of America becoming more diverse. The fear collapses under scrutiny. The United States has always been a multicultural nation. Immigrants built its industries. Minorities advanced in cultures, art, technology, and civil rights. Diversity doesn't weaken a society. It limits unchecked power, which is exactly what some people fear losing. So when Errol Musk ties demographic change to decline, he's revealing a worldview rooted in hierarchy, not history. And that is exactly why people are reacting so strongly. This conversation isn't just about one man's opinion. It's about confronting the narratives that continue to shape how people see race, power, and progress. And unless we challenge those narratives loudly and clearly, they will continue to shape the future in the same harmful ways they shaped the past. Guys, drop a comment, let me know what are your thoughts. Also, remember to subscribe, like, and share as well. And until next time, bye-bye.